Tonight on NewsCenter, landslide victory in landmark elections. With votes still being counted, Nobel Peace laureate Aung San Suu Kyi is set to usher in a historic victory in Myanmar's first free general election in a quarter of a century. A shortcut across the top of the world. Korea and Iceland agreed to boost cooperation in the Arctic region and explore a shorter trade route across the North Pole. And back on track. Korea's National Assembly gets back to work as the main opposition returns from a week-long boycott over state history textbooks. It's Monday, November 9th, 2015. Hello and a very good evening to you. I'm Moon Conn-young. This is Arirang News Center. We lost. The first words by Myanmar's ruling party acting chairman as he conceded defeat in the Southeast Asian country's first free nationwide elections in 25 years. Now, most ballots are still being counted, but the opposition, led by democracy figurehead Aung San Suu Kyi, appear on course for a landslide victory that would ensure it can form the next government. Arirang News correspondent Daniel Epstein is on the ground for us. Dan, a mood of festivities there.
Me, NLD fans are going wild, as you can see and hear. They haven't even received the official results, but in their mind, they've already won. They've received 70% of the parliamentary seats, and that number keeps on changing as we're getting more results coming in. The official results by the UEC, they say, will only come in tomorrow, but in the minds of the Aung San Suu Kyi NLD party's supporters, it's already a victory. Now, countries around the world have sent in letters of praise, saying, congratulations, Myanmar, you've held great, open, free, democratic elections, and you're on a new path. And as evidenced by the people behind me, they are ecstatic about the change which they feel is happening, and this is a key moment for that change. Back to you.
And Arirang News will keep you posted on the final results of Myanmar's landmark parliamentary elections as we get them. Thank you, Dan. That was Daniel Epstein reporting from Yangon, Myanmar. Now, here in this country, the National Assembly is finally back on track this Monday after main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, boycotted the parliament over the government's decision to push ahead with state-authored history textbooks. But possibilities of further bipartisan conflicts still do remain. Our parliamentary correspondent Park Ji-won joins us from the National Assembly. Now, Ji-won, which committees were the first ones back to work?
Good evening, Conn-young. Several of the National Assembly's standing committees, as well as a special budget committee, have resumed deliberations on pending bills and budget items this Monday. The Budget Committee in particular has a very busy schedule ahead as it is facing an early December deadline to complete work on the government's budget for next year. The committee met just twice last week, and without the main opposition NPAD since the Liberal Party boycotted them in protest over the government's move to reintroduce a state-issued history textbook for secondary schools. But they have returned to Parliament to fully assume their responsibilities and take up pressing legislation. The ruling Senator Party welcomed the move to normalize Parliament.
We're facing a pileup of current issues, including next year's budget and the passage of several economy and reform-related bills. We need to end wasteful debates on history education and focus on bipartisan cooperation to push policies.
The main opposition NPAD remains adamantly against the government's decision to bring back state-issued history textbooks, but now is taking a two-track approach. While the Liberal Party will cooperate on legislative duties, it plans to continue protesting the issue. And their concern and criticism continued on Monday.
The current administration is trying to enforce conformist history education on our children, but it is going to destroy students' creativity.
Meanwhile, leaders of the main rival parties, together with National Assembly Speaker Chung Ui-hwa, have agreed to honor the deadline that was set for redrawing electoral districts ahead of next year's general elections, which falls on Friday. Conn-young?
And we are also learning that meeting of the leaders across the political aisle could take place as early as tomorrow here in Korea. Thank you, Ji-won. Well, Korea and Iceland agreed on stronger cooperation in the Arctic region, with one of their major plans being shortening the travel distance for ships, which then is expected to result in more cooperation on the economic front. Kwon So-ah has this report.
South Korea and Iceland are separated by around 8,300 kilometers of land and sea. And for the first time, an Icelandic president has traveled the distance since diplomatic ties were established more than 5 decades ago. On Monday, President Park Geun-hye and President Olafur Ragnar Grimsson held summit talks at the presidential office of Cheongwade. There, the two laid out the groundwork for shortening the distance of a trade route between Europe and Asia that will save both sides time and money. They discussed a North Pole route that would reduce shipping time between Korea's southern port city of Busan to the Netherlands' southern city of Rotterdam by over 30%. Compared to the conventional route through the Indian Ocean and Suez Canal, it would be a drop from 40 to 30 days. This would provide Korea and Iceland a good opportunity to boost trade. Last year, Korea's exports to the Nordic country were worth just $3.1 million, mainly in cars and tires, while it imported $2.6 million worth of products like fish and fur. Park and Grimsson also discussed energy matters. While Iceland is #1 in producing renewable energy among the 34 OECD nations, Korea is at the bottom with room to grow. Korea's interest in the Arctic region, known to be rich in natural reserves, and will to deepen its partnership with Iceland has only gotten bigger since it became a permanent observer of the high-level Intergovernmental Arctic Council that deals with issues in the polar region. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
In North Korea's Marshal of the Korean People's Army, Ri Il-sul, died of cancer over the weekend. A state funeral in North Korea has sparked another fresh round of purge speculations after one of Kim Jong-un's most powerful aides was omitted from the official funeral committee list. Our Kim Hyun-bin has the latest on the reclusive regime's movers and shakers.
North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has expressed condolences on the death of Ri Il-sul, who died from lung cancer over the weekend. Lee was Marshal of the Korean People's Army. According to the Korean Central News Agency on Monday, the communist leader visited the mortuary where Ri's body was held on Sunday. A state funeral is planned for Wednesday. Lee held numerous key posts in the KPA and was appointed Marshal of the North's military in 1995. Pyongyang has released the composition of the official 170-strong funeral committee, but the list doesn't include Choi Ryong-hae, the Secretary of the Workers' Party of Korea, raising speculation about his fate. South Korea's Unification Ministry said on Monday it will analyze the list to see if there are any changes to the communist regime's power hierarchy, and added it is unusual for Choi not to be listed. Chung Seung-chang, a senior researcher at the Sejong Institute, says Choi may have been ousted from the party. Chung says there are also other changes in the North's hierarchy and points to the director of the Korean People's Army, Hwang Byung-seo, who seems to have moved up one rung on the ladder to become third highest in the communist regime's hierarchy. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
The massive Trans-Pacific Partnership is poised to change the landscape of global trade. Led by the U.S. and Japan, the deal will eventually open up the trade floodgates for its 12 member nations. But what influence will it have on those non-members of the mega deal like Korea and its exporters? Our Shin Se-min gives us a rundown.
The Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, is a multinational trade agreement dubbed the world's largest free trade deal. The trade pact makes up for more than a quarter of the world's trade volume, covering a combined population of nearly 800 million. Now, looking at this map, the pact involves a total of 12 countries, including some of the world's largest economies like the U.S. and Japan. And then you have Malaysia, Vietnam, and 8 other countries on the Pacific Rim. All, when combined, account for some 40% of the entire global economy. Taking a closer look, Korea is not included. The Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency says Korean manufacturers in the automobile, auto parts, electronics, and display sectors will suffer, losing price competitiveness in the global trade market. Local firms involved in the oil, chemicals, and construction industries will also be put at a disadvantage. And if Korea were to join the pact, experts say the country's annual trade balance could increase by up to $300 million and reap production effects worth over $800 million. Still, others say there's no need for Korea to join, as it is already in bilateral trade deals with 10 of the 12 TPP countries. And those countries account for 75% of the world's GDP. Earlier this month, a full report on the TPP deal was released, and the level of market liberalization was found to be very similar to the free trade agreement between Seoul and Washington. It's still uncertain whether the Korean government is mulling the possibility of joining the pact in hopes of becoming the 13th TPP member nation.
Thanks, Semin, for that. Should Seoul join the U.S.-led multilateral trade pact, and if so, when would be the best time? Well, joining us live in the studio to break down the pros and cons is Lee Jae-min, professor of international law at Seoul National University's School of Law. Professor Lee, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Now, after reading through all 6,000 pages and the fine prints of it, the Korean government said that this mega trade deal doesn't look a whole lot different from the Korea-U.S. free trade deal. Now, what is your takeaway from it? What's your impression?
Thank you. Well, this is, again, another FTA. So in that respect, there are similarities between this one and the previous FTAs as well. But at the same time, this FTA is quite different. As we call it, it's a mega FTA of 12 nations. And in particular, this FTA introduces new rules and new norms of international trade. So this is, in a sense, this is a platform for new trade rules of the global community. So it can herald the advent of a new trade regime in the future. So if that is the case, this TPP agreement is quite symbolic and very important for many countries, in particular Korea, which is 8th largest trading country in the world. So in that regard, this FTA is the same or similar with the previous one, but at the same time, this is a significant departure, so to speak, or deviation from the conventional system of FTA. So this is a very important issue for Korea, I think.
Right, so this is not only a free trade agreement, but it's really a set of rules that set the new norm of trade, I believe.
Right.
Now, so the TPP, like you said, includes some new factors, which include standardized place of origin rules, limiting excessive protectionism of state-owned enterprises, and eased rules on e-commerce. Now, how would the addition of these new factors affect, Korea and its trade relations with the rest of the world?
Yeah, so these new rules are introduced to this agreement for the first time. So we have not seen this kind of rules in previous documents or previous agreements.
Ever before?
Ever before. So it's really difficult to expect how these new rules will play out. So, so the difficulty of understanding this TPP agreement is how other countries will implement these new rules which have been adopted for the first time, and how other countries will implement these new rules domestically. Well, this is a big challenge for Korea too. If Korea ever joins the TPP, then the first question and the big question is how we understand these new rules and how we implement these new rules domestically. Other countries will be watching Korea. Other countries will be watching very carefully how Korea will implement these new rules in Korea or with respect to vis-a-vis other countries. So in that regard, these new rules will be very important for Korea to assess the final impact of the agreement on Korea's overall interest on a long-term basis.
Now, even within Korea, opinions remain divided on whether Seoul should join the TPP or not. Now, those who support the Seoul's joining of the TPP say that Seoul if it stays outside of the bloc, will lose its competitiveness, especially against Japan. Those who are against this joining of the TPP, they say that there are contentious issues like agriculture or intellectual property and products and services and investments. What are the pros and cons of Seoul joining this TPP?
That's really difficult to find a definitive answer to this complex question. But obviously there are pros and cons. There are positive aspects and negative aspects for Korea to join the TPP.
Sure.
Well, as you just mentioned, the negative side is obvious. This FTA is a very huge FTA. So obviously it entails a lot of sensitivities domestically, as you mentioned, agricultural issue, intellectual property issue, and small and medium enterprises issue, and automobile industry issue in particular. So there are many sensitivities politically in Korea. So in that regard, I think it will be quite tough process for Korea to be prepared for the accession process in the future. So that's a difficult part or negative aspect of Korea's joining the TPP. At the same time, given Korea's status in international trading regime, given how much we are gaining from trade with other countries, particularly with these 12 countries, even including Japan, it's difficult for us to expect Korea, which is outside this huge trading regime. So I think it's a matter of time for Korea to join the TPP or any other mega FTA for that matter with other name, with other countries in the future, given again Korea's status in the international trading regime. If that is the case, well, maybe there's some negative aspects in the beginning, but on a longer term basis, on balance, I think Korea will better off by joining the TPP or any other similar mega FTA in the future.
Sure. South Korea was initially invited to join in on the TPP negotiations table by the U.S. after the successful conclusion of the Korea-U.S. FTA, which is back in 2010, I believe. And then President Park, during her trip to Washington, D.C. last month, signaled her interest in joining the TPP. How do we explain the shift in stance, and how should South Korea position itself so that the Korean government could get the upper hand, so to speak, in negotiations on trying to jump on the bandwagon?
Well, I think Korea made a difficult decision at the time. But in retrospect, I think Korea should have participated in the negotiation early on, given all the outcome of the negotiation. As we see from the text, again, there are many new rules, many new developments, and we are not really privy to the information because we have not participated in the negotiation, which is an important setback for Korea in planning to prepare itself for the future development in this new terrain, so to speak, new uncharted territory. So in that regard, I think, in my personal view, it is unfortunate that Korea has been part of this formulation of the new rule. But at the same time, there are benefits of waiting, so we can see how other countries are implementing these new rules, and then we can adjust ourselves in moving forward. So it's difficult to say whether that decision back in 2010 was an appropriate one or not. It depends. I think the jury is still out there. But at the same time, what is most important for us now is to understand the real impact of this particular FTA and what this TPP actually means for Korea. It's not about the tariff reduction effect, but more about how the new trading regime is to be formulated in the future, which will affect Korea directly. We have to understand that first, and we have to do our homework.
Right.
And then we have to, plan out our future strategy. And then we'll have to negotiate with other 12 nations. The negotiation will be quite brutal, I think, and tough.
Right, to join on this new global trade norm.
Right.
All right, Lee Jae-min, Professor of Law at Seoul National University, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
A A new OECD report shows many advanced countries, including Korea, are suffering from a growing obesity epidemic among children and adults. But what's striking is the low rate of obesity among young Korean girls compared to boys here. Kim Ji-yeon reports on how double standards in beauty are intensifying this health problem.
Walk through the bustling streets of Seoul, and it's only a matter of time before you spot a store window or billboard covered with a photo of a professional model. Turn on a TV and flip through, a large portion of airtime is filled with thin, flawless-looking celebrities on shows and in commercials. Such perfectly presented, photoshopped, and edited content has become mainstream, so it's no surprise an average Korean woman would point to these as the ideal.
Big hips and tight waistline.
A woman with good curves.
All this shows just how much emphasis the Korean society has on one's appearance. And local experts say this is one of the main factors young girls are under social pressure to conform to idealized body standards, which is considered more serious for Koreans compared to other nationalities. Recent OECD data shows that obesity rates among Korean children have been on a steady rise, with a big rate gap between the genders. The rate among Korean boys aged between 5 and 17 was around 26% in 2013. This is double the rate for Korean girls at 14%, which was way below the OECD average.
Children, teens, and their parents are heavily affected by the prevalence of skinny models and celebrities in mass media. The standard of beauty is harsher for women than men, which is why society is more lenient towards overweight boys than girls.
The doctor warns extreme dieting at an early age can cause major health risks, including osteoporosis, anemia, and menstrual irregularity. So to have a healthy diet, it's important to exercise daily and consume enough proteins, vitamins, and minerals, while also cutting down on carbohydrate intake. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Also, a report from the OECD. The International Economic Organization has slashed Korea's growth outlook for this year to 2.7%, down 0.3 percentage points from its forecast back in June. The Paris-based group on Monday cited sluggish private spending due to the MERS outbreak earlier this year, slumping exports prompted by slowing demand in emerging economies and China for the downgrade. But it expects the Korean economy to gain momentum next year and grow 3.1% as free trade deals with countries like Australia and Canada help boost the country's exports. Now, for the global economy, the OECD cut its growth outlook to 2.9% this year and 3.3% for 2016. As one of Korea's many official development assistance plans, the Korea Tourism Organization invited more than 70 participants from 15 different countries to share the success of Korea's tourism industry. Our Lee Ji-won introduces us to the Global Tourism Leaders Forum.
Jeju-do Island, Hanok Village, Myeongdong are famous tourist spots in Korea. But a country cannot simply attract tourists with its sceneries. It needs to follow the trend and taste of the changing tourists of today. This is one of the messages highlighted by Kim Sang-tae, director of the Korea Culture and Tourism Institute, during the 2015 Global Tourism Leaders Forum held in Seoul on Monday. Kim's presentation addressed the trends of cultural tourism and tourism policies in Korea. According to the Korea expert, if the late 1990s were about mass tourism focused on nature and package tours, the 2010s has called for more of a creative approach. This could be touching on the experiences of the Korean people's culture and daily lives. Kim cited temple stay as one of the successful products reflecting today's trends.
Among Korea's official development assistance, tourism is an important sector. By inviting the recipient countries, Korea would like to share the know-hows for a successful tourism industry.
The forum invited leaders of Korea's tourism industry to share their success stories with other countries. Participants invited from 15 countries took note of new suggestions and also presented their own country reports.
In Colombia, we have many challenges, and we learned that here in the forum. For example, we have to improve our converge between culture, tourism, and IT technologies. And we have to improve as well the investment in tourism, in cultural tourism in Colombia.
After the forum, participants will be offered various training programs to gain hands-on experience in tourism policies and hotel service, helping them gain more insights on Korea's tourism industry. 이지원, Arirang News.
And also in downtown Seoul today, an international women's group hosted its annual bazaar to raise funds for Korean charities. Visitors who joined in to support the cause were richly rewarded with a chance to experience exotic goods and foods. Our Lee Soo-eun takes us to the Siwa Bazaar.
A ribbon-cutting ceremony opened the 53rd Annual Seoul International Women's Association Bazaar in downtown Seoul today. Joined by several political and economic figures, the event was then handed over to charity groups and vendors from around the world to begin their sales.
This vase from Iran, painted in vivid blue, and these fancy leather boots from Portugal are just some of the things that you can find at today's bazaar. What's even better is that the profits go to support a good cause.
We shop, we eat, we spend money here, and everything gets donated to charity. Not just in Seoul, but around the Korean Peninsula. We give money to over 30 charities every year.
Embassies and cultural groups representing some 39 countries gathered under the theme Share Culture, Share Love, Share Life to join the initiative.
What brings us out to the Siwa Bazaar is the spirit of giving, actually, to give back to the people we live with in the community who are in need, hopefully women and children who are in need.
Siwa is a Seoul-based women's group with over 400 members from 40 nations, and it's been around the city engaging in charitable activities for more than 50 years.
So we bring women from so many different parts of the world together to create friendship. And while we're also engaging in cultural exchange, that also enriches our lives. And we also work on charity to help the less fortunate in Korea.
With around 4,000 to 5,000 people attending this year's event, Siwa's Bazaar, just like its slogan, shared culture, love, and life with the community. Lee Soo-eun, Arirang News.
38 North is a program of the U.S.-Korea Institute at Johns Hopkins University dedicated to providing analysis of events in and around North Korea. Their blog is authored by its faculty and guest commentators, including Dr. Rudiger Frank, a longtime North Korea expert, an economist, and a professor of East Asian Studies at the University of Vienna. Dr. Frank was educated at Kim Il-sung University in North Korea and has been visiting the reclusive state for the past 24 years. I recently had a chance to sit down with him. In this part 2 of my 2-part interview, we discussed the state of the North Korean economy and the emergence of what he called a middle class in North Korea. What would you say is the state of the North Korean economy at this point?
Well, it's obviously in a stage of transition. For someone who's going to North Korea as regularly as I do for 25 years now, it's obvious the country is changing. Not fast and not always at the pace we want, but definitely in a visible way, and I think also in a way that can't be wound back. For example, the existence of markets where people can go and buy whatever they want in case they have the money, that's something that wasn't there. I'm really hesitant to call them black markets, those Changmadang, because they are legal, at least the ones that I have seen. They are heavily guarded. In order to trade there, you have to have a license.
I have also heard of young entrepreneurs in North Korea. Are there entrepreneurs?
Oh, yes. Usually they are in the restaurant business or in the tourism business. These are things where you can actually be an entrepreneur in North Korea. Obviously, you need to have some kind of connection, because you will not be really a private entrepreneur, but it all takes place under the cover of some collective, but de facto, yes. And many young people I met from the educated middle class, they actually dream about entering business, opening their own restaurant, coffee shop, or tourism company.
You said middle class. So are you saying that there is a middle class in North Korea?
Very obviously. That's one of the big changes that I have observed in the last 24 years, that this middle class has actually emerged. You now do have people who look differently, who are more fashionably dressed, who have mobile phones, who have the right body language, who are very self-confident on the streets, not only of Pyongyang, but also of Cheongjin, Pyeongseong, Sariwon, any other major North Korean city.
So are we seeing an emergence of capitalism in North Korea?
Well, I would say what we see is the attempt by the state to use different means to achieve economic progress.
At least the middle class in North Korea have had a taste of what money can bring them.
Absolutely, yes. And this is transforming their whole outlook on life, because they understand whatever you want to get, if you have money, you can get it.
Can we anticipate a unification like that of Germany?
Definitely no. To begin with, because Korea and Germany are so different. If we look at the changes going on in North Korea right now, leading to 3 million owners of mobile phones by now, and the emergence of a middle class, and learning capitalism from the Chinese, and an increasing readiness by the leadership to accept that. If we look at that and project it into the future, if it goes on for another 10 or 15 years, then South Korea will be negotiating unification with a partner that is more equal. Not necessarily equal in economic power, although I think North Korea can even surpass South Korea one day, because they have the border with China, they have the raw materials there, and they are lacking technology and capital, but that can be brought in. But what's more important is South Korea will negotiate with the North Korea that understands the rules of the game, which was not the case for the East German leadership in 1990, when the negotiations were held about German unification. So it will be a completely different situation. And I think it's important that South Korea understands that and prepares for that.
Volkswagen engineers have reportedly admitted they manipulated emissions data because they could not achieve excessive goals. Bruce Harrison joins me now in the studio. Bruce, it sounds like these employees were possibly driven to cheat.
Hello, Kanyang. German newspaper Byolan Somtong broke this story and says the engineers didn't dare tell former chief executive Martin Winterkorn they couldn't reach the high standards he set for pollution reduction. Now, regardless if that's true, the company's still on the hook for tens of billions of dollars in damages.
Right. I guess the question now is, who knew and how high up the chain did the scandal go?
What we're hearing right now is just one side of the story. No word yet from Volkswagen or Winterkorn about whether or not he was involved in the cheating, and it's still unclear if the engineers truly believed that scamming standards was a better option than letting their boss know they couldn't meet his goals. According to the German newspaper, Winterkorn declared at the Geneva Motor Show in 2012 that VW wanted to cut carbon dioxide emissions by 30% by this year. Volkswagen did say employees indicated in an internal investigation that, and these are Volkswagen's words, there were irregularities in ascertaining fuel consumption data. The paper said the company is encouraging staff to cooperate with its internal investigation by promising not to fire or sue them. Volkswagen's supervisory board met today to discuss growing fallout from the scandal. Auto analysts say the company could pay as much as $38 billion for fines, lawsuits, and the cost to bring VWs across the world up to emissions standards. In a few hours, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu meets U.S. President Barack Obama at the White House, and the two of them aren't on the best terms right now. Netanyahu's hoping to secure more military aid from the U.S. They're also expected to talk about Syria and Israeli-Palestinian violence. Now, the meeting's an attempt to repair Obama and Netanyahu's frosty relationship. Obama's been cold toward Netanyahu since he tried last spring to stop the U.S. nuclear deal with Iran. And just a few months ago, Netanyahu appointed a new spokesperson who's referred to Obama on social media as an anti-Semite.
I would put the title on this meeting, damage control. Damage control, both for Netanyahu and for Obama.
Both sides have said the strategic U.S.-Israel alliance is more important than personal feelings.
Right. I suppose mending ties, repairing their trust would benefit both leaders, right?
You know, right now Obama's second term in office is winding down, and Netanyahu's dealing with a lot of violence between Israelis and Palestinians. So if they get on the same page, it would definitely benefit both of them.
All right. Thank you, Bruce, for that, and we will see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Conn-young.
Chillier conditions have set in this country following rain over the weekend. But did we get enough to help ease the drought? Jihan, what's the latest on the readings?
Well, Conn-young, here in Seoul, we received about 36 millimeters of rain, which is a moderate amount, but not quite enough to get us back up to optimal levels. Now, the accumulated rainfall is about 780 millimeters this year, and that's 460 less compared to last year.
So it sounds like more rain is definitely what we need. Can we expect another round of showers anytime soon?
Well, not for a while. It's forecast to be a dry week under a good amount of sunshine. And this Thursday, is a big day for test taker as the 2016 National College Entrance Exam will be held. But thankfully, the weather will stay mild under pearly sunny skies. And as for tomorrow's weather conditions, chilly morning lows will hit the capital, but highs will be higher than today under a mix of sun and clouds. So it will be a good day to enjoy the autumn colors tomorrow, but toxic smog will strike again. A dusty day is in store for the western parts of the peninsula, where air quality levels will be lower than normal. On that note, let's take a look at the readings for tomorrow. Daily highs here in Seoul will hike up to 14, Daegu and Gwangju peak at 17, and Busan tops out at 18. And as for the other regions, Daejeon and Jeju Island will see a high of 15 and 16, while Dokdo rises to 12. Now that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that is our broadcast on this Monday evening. I'm Moon Conn-young. Thank you all for watching. We hope to see you right back here same time tomorrow on NewsCenter.